session is Reconnecting with Nature. And when developing the agenda for this meeting, we quickly agreed that rivers are an excellent leitmotif for this session, because Europe, you all know, there's a huge system of rivers crisscrossing countries, many of them border rivers, and we have many Interreg projects on rivers, along rivers, developing green zones along rivers, working on flood management, on river management. And for this brief session, I would like to welcome two colleagues from the Netherlands, Sandra van Assen and Peter Schengenga. And they will briefly tell us about a huge program called Room for the River, and then about a very concrete example. And without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Sandra. Sandra, the floor is yours. Please unmute that we don't.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you for having us. It's an honor to be part of this inspiring meeting today. And together with Peter, I hope to contribute to the main theme of today concerning not just the output, but the process and the how as well. My name is Sandra van Assen. I'm an urban planner and architect, and I am working on, just a second, because I'm trying to, yes, now I know how to move. I'm working on a part-time PhD at the Technical University in Delft, and together with José van Kampen and Professor Wil Sonneveld, I started the research program Q Factor, and it focuses on place quality governance, specifically advice practices that function as place quality governance tools. I will present how Room for the River organized place quality governance, and I will highlight a tool, which is the Q team, quality team Room for the River. And I will start with a very compact introduction of the project, because Peter will elaborate further. But it is important to tell that in the 1990s, two major floods resulted in immense damage. And this is when the Dutch government decided to change its policy on river flood management, away from recurrently raising embankments and dikes towards making more room for the rivers. In other words, reconnecting the rivers with nature. And this was a paradigm shift in Dutch water management. Room for the River consisted of 4 rivers, 34 projects, and the costs were 2.3 billion euros, just to give you an idea. The success of Room for the River lies in cohesion and the combination of all kinds of aspects in productive solutions in space with positive impact on nature and on people. In the shortest summary of the project's success, is place quality, or in other words, beautiful, sustainable, together, the motto of new European Bauhaus. The success of Room for the River would never have been as large when quality hadn't been one of the 2 major goals from the very first start of the project. And this is important to realize. And at the same time, what was also important, it was a top-bottom program. So national coordination and local implementation. The equal goals of improving safety and place quality on all scales provided room for negotiation. And now I come to the main message of my story. Setting place quality as a goal, for example, in Interreg projects, it's a good start. However, place quality is not going to happen by itself. Besides setting the goal, good quality governance is needed, and the right tool repertoire from the beginning till the end and on every scale. And now I see everybody think, yeah, what is place quality governance? Well, Well, here the link between the Declaration of Davos, the new European Bauhaus, and Interreg is relevant. And in the scheme, you see how following the Davos Declaration, we are all advised to place quality at the center of European development policies and projects, including Interreg projects. Quality as the fundament of the legacy that we leave behind in every program and every project. And to help us to follow this advice, the International Davos community published the Bouwcultuur quality system. I don't know if you know it, but it's a very interesting system comprising of 8 place quality criteria. And what we learn from these criteria is that place quality is both substantive and instrumental. It concerns both the characteristics of physical projects and places and the governance. And in our research, we found that it is good place quality governance what defines the success of Room for the River. It offered a coherent framework for stimulating and enhancing the 7 other criteria from this quality system. However, place quality governance is not common practice, but it is needed to achieve the Davos challenge of placing quality at the heart of programs and projects. So about place quality governance, it is different in a way from regular governance because it is based on true quality culture, which is an environment where people genuinely care about quality and make decisions based on achieving place quality. Davos specifically defines quality governance as governance that promotes quality culture, inclusive, democratic, and just, by breaking down boundaries when needed, as cohesion and the reconnecting with nature are at its core. Well, this brings me to the tools of place quality governance. And for this, I used a model developed by the UCL professor Carmona. It is used in the European project Urban Maestro. And this typology, this model, distinguishes quality culture and quality delivery. This is in line with the substantive and instrumental sides of place quality. Quality delivery is the shaping of projects and places, the quality of the physical environment. Quality culture is the positive decision-making environment, the awareness that place quality is something to strive for. And working along both lines is important. It is a balancing act. It is different in every project because every project is unique, of course. But examining Room for the River, we found that the parallel attention for quality culture and quality delivery was organized well. And in this scheme, you see that many tools were developed, but they concern both quality and delivery. And the quality team of Room for the River is one of the tools next to some other place quality tools, like, for example, a design cluster and the landscape architect, like Peter. He is one of the landscape architects. In our research, we define quality teams as advisory practices of interdisciplinary team aimed at enhancing place quality as a defined public interest. The quality team of Room for the River was an independent team consisting of 5 disciplines: a river expert, a landscape architect, urban designer, ecologist, and physical geographer. And these experts were capable of working together and developing integrated recommendations. And they focused on both goals, both safety and place quality. And they had a role during the whole process. They were operative on all scales, and they deliberately used quality delivery and quality culture tools. For example, guides, coaching, the performance of peer review, a final assessment of all the 34 projects. This brings me to the final takeaways of my presentation. I would like to advise every Interreg project to make place quality a co-objective and to organize quality governance and to choose the right tool repertoire, which is a mix of quality delivery and quality culture tools. during the whole process of a program or project and on all scales. These are challenges of which I hope that they will turn out to be success factors in all the projects that you will be working on. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sandra. That was really inspiring. And I would like to immediately pass on to Peter. We can see it still.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Full screen, all good.
Thank you, Bernhard. Also, thanks for inviting me to present this story about our involvement in the design of the Dutch river area in the Room for the River program. We as Noppes HNS landscape architects have been involved from the beginning of the Room for the River thinking in strategic planning, selecting alternatives on local scale, and also the detailed design until realization in some of the 34 projects. But many other of our colleagues, other landscape architects were involved as well because the program was so big, of course. Our way of thinking is and also working is design, so that's doing things, but also leave things open. And that really fits this approach, the Room for the River way of thinking. You create a framework or structure, work with conditions, and then the nature and the people, they take over the place and they start developing it based on the conditions. And that's the way of thinking. First, a little background of the river region in order to understand the thoughts behind the Room for River program, and then I will focus on the Room for River project in the city of Nijmegen. This is the Rhine basin. You can see that all the water that needs to pass the Netherlands on its way to the sea is coming actually from a part of Switzerland, Germany, and France, and it needs to pass our delta country. And the challenge is that the discharge is increasing. It doesn't happen so often, of course. We count with a situation that happens one time every 1,000 or 1,200 years. But the amount of water that needs to pass our country is entering our country from Germany is huge. It was 15,000 cubic meters. Room for the River made the river region safe to deal with 16,000 cubic meters per second, and it will be even 18 in the far future. So the challenge is big to make room for that. And at the same time, during the last century or 2 centuries, the natural Room for the River was actually became smaller, especially because of urban development. Dikes were realigned in order to make a space for cities to grow. And the result is some urban bottlenecks, places where the water is having difficulties to pass and causing higher water levels upstream, of course. And as a third thing, the Dutch rivers are not as most rivers in Europe in the middle of a valley, low parts, but they are surrounded by high dikes and surrounded by low-lying polder area. So you could see immediately on this model why it's so important that the river area is safe and that the water is kept between those dikes, because in case of a dike breach, the floods will actually stretch over a large part of our country. Now, a typical cross-section of the rivers, you can see the part of the river that's always wet. We call that the summer bed, where also that's suitable for shipping as well. There are groins. They are built to also, in case of low discharges, to prevent that there is sedimentation in the summer bed of the river. It needs to be kept depth as deep as possible. Then there's a floodplain. The floodplain is bordered by a dike, high enough and safe enough, maintained by the water boards. And the floodplains used to be agricultural mainly. And around 20 years ago or 25 years ago, there was a big change, the idea that you can also develop nature, and that these were not the best place for agriculture in the far future. So spot by spot, the river region is being transformed to an area with new nature, actually. And so that was a big shift, and it was already going on when Room for the River program, when it started. So there was already a coalition between high water safety and nature discovered, and that was actually very important to develop the Room for River ideas. Sandra just told about the floods or the high waters in the 90s. This is one picture, and every time I look at this picture, I feel the danger of the water and also the importance of this dike. And strengthening of dikes, that's something that's done for ages already, centuries. And we as an office were also involved in this. And of course, in the Netherlands, we know how to do it. But it's still needed. But raising dikes every time you need to deal with higher water levels, that was not the way to go. And Room for a River is a shift in this. And the idea is, well, instead of taking those high water levels for granted and raise your dike, you could also say, well, we would like to lower the water levels. And how can you lower the water levels? You can lower it by making providing more room for the river again. And there are many ways to do it. The summer bed can be deepened, that's one thing, but it might be better to introduce high water channels, to depolder or naturalize agriculture areas, remove obstacles, lower floodplains, but also often the case in Room for River projects, relocate the dikes again. So take back the room that was taken from the river before. In the beginning of the program, we were involved in the strategic planning, and we came with these three different concepts. How can you give the rivers more room again? The concepts are a wide river, so relocations along the dikes, evenly spread over the country. This one, old and new, was introducing big new rivers to right in the middle of the agriculture areas. So actually, design more river branches in the Netherlands. And the third one was called river cities. Maybe the spots that looked not the easiest, seemed not to be the easiest, but maybe the most interesting for these big projects, because you could also give more quality to the environment of the cities. And you can say, well, that the measures that were chosen are a bit a mix between different models, but there are also lots of big projects in the surrounding of the big cities, river cities. And there's an overview of all the projects in the spread over the country. What's interesting is that, of course, it's a national program, but there were mostly local authorities, so the municipalities or provinces responsible for the selection, but mainly for the design of the measures. And so also was the city of the municipality of Nijmegen. And for them, it was a big shift in thinking. This is an image, aerial image of Nijmegen. It's a very old city, Roman origin already, mainly developed on the southern banks of the rivers, and the northern banks were very agricultural still. This is a high water situation. And years ago, before Room for the River already, the city made big plans for urban expansion on the northern side of the river. And these were the first plans for that, first sketches. And you can see that the plan puts hardly attention to the riverside. There was a recreational area, but it was positioned behind the dikes. And the floodplains and the river are just colored blue and nothing else. But this is, of course, one of those urban bottlenecks. So this was a hotspot in the Room for the River program, really needed to do something here. So step by step, the municipality started to rethink their orientation to the river. And they and step by step, they thought, well, instead of a threat, this could be an opportunity, this program, to also orientate our new and old and also the new city in another way to the river area. And you can see step by step how their way of thinking shifted completely. And also instead of a city with only one bridge as connection between the two banks, now it became a city with many bridges, with not one river, but some river courses, and also lots of interaction between the water and the city, and also the nature and the surrounding. Here you can see in this scheme what happened. The gray line is the old dike. The dike is realigned to the north. Part of the old dike is now integrated in a new island in the river, and a new river branch is located over here. And lots of new bridges are constructed as connection between the island and the new aligned dike. And in this scheme, you can see the overview. The effect is a low ridge of the water level of around 34 centimeters, and that's actually a lot if you compare to other river projects. On a concept level, it's the connection between the two sides of the city, old and new, and it's also the connection of the river and the natural river environment in the heart of the new city. And then we started thinking, and we thought, well, there's a lot of parks already in Nijmegen, and every park is an expression of the time in which it was designed, of course. And what would be the design of the park area in the middle? And we call it, this is the urban river park. So that's the concept for this area. This design has several layers. The existing situation at the bottom, the design, the construction in the middle. This layer stands for the water calendar. The water levels are moving through the seasons. And the last one, of course, is the way the landscape and also the natural development can take it over a bit. It also starts to change. Vegetation grows. Erosion can happen, sedimentation can happen, and all these things. So it's not completely fixed. An overview from the west to the east. The western is quite natural. It can also be used as an event area, accessible with this new bridge. This is the central island area. There are some houses here already, but these were houses that were already there because they were lying along the old dike, but a space for further development. A new quay on the north side, and also a bridge that connects to the island. And on the east side, an inlet that's high enough to keep the water out when necessary, and when the water in the river is actually higher, this threshold overtops, and the new gully starts to stream. Very important for recreation, also very well used already after it was opened, but not so much programmed. What you can do and where you can do it is actually organized by the water levels mainly. So that's very interesting, and that's the big difference between existing parks and this natural environment. Some images of the hard quay, the new bridge, and people immediately started to canoe and to use it. This is one of the new bridges. There are many, but this is the one I like the most. The bridge is positioned over the new stream, new branch, and it goes up and down, it curves. And what's interesting is that part of it also can flood. And if it starts to flood, you can reach the other side by making use of these stepping stones. And it's also discovered immediately and used. The first time during the first high waters, people were queuing to use these stepping stones. So it was liked a lot by the inhabitants. It was a big work, lots of digging. Of course, you can see it. It looks very natural now, but it has been a lot of work to construct. An overview of how it's realized just before the trestle starts to overtop. This is relatively high water, and you can see here on this image. So far,